is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, welcome everybody to the inaugural episode of Iconic Auctions Live Showcase, the official auction showcase show on Sports Cards Live. It is Friday night, July the 21st, 2023, and my name is Jeremy Lee. Tonight, we have joining us the president of Iconic Auctions, my friend Jeff Woolf. Let's bring him out. Jeff, welcome back. Welcome back to Sports Cards Live. How are you?
I'm doing good, Jer. I'm doing good. I mean, it's been a while. The whole, even on the back end of it, the whole intro into the show, everything has evolved since I was here, 300 shows ago or some crazy number?
You were here. I made a note. It was over 3 years ago. It was June the 13th, 2020. It was episode number 19 of Sports Cards Live. That show is up to 190 something now. But overall, we're into like the 420s, 420, 430 total live streams that I have done across various different shows. So yeah, man, it's good to have you back. It's good to have you back, and it's good to partner with Iconic and get help you spread the message about what you're doing there and at Iconic Auctions. And you've been doing it for a long time at Iconic Auctions. You're not a new auction company. You've been around for a while. This is you. We are here to showcase what you call the National Feature Auction. You plan this and organize it around the National Sports Collectors Convention. You've been setting up there for years, showcasing the National Feature Auction items for people to see. So really important. We'll mention this again later, but really important to know that all the items, many of the items that are in this auction are going to be on display at the National next week at the Iconic Auctions booth. So that's pretty cool. Tell us a bit about how important is the National Feature Auction for you?
It's one of our biggest auctions of the year. We kind of gear up for it. It's to give the significance to the show. It's the only show we do. I mean, in this day and age with technology and, you can communicate with everybody through your website and whatever else. There's really, unless you're on the East Coast, we're in Arizona, obviously. If you're on the East Coast where there's a bunch of shows going on and it's down the street from you, it makes sense. But for somebody like us that's out here in Arizona, it doesn't make sense to go to shows unless they're going to be really impactful. And the National has basically become the Super Bowl of not just card shows, but cards and memorabilia in general, in my opinion. It's always been card centric. It always will be. But for us, you could see by the graphics we have up here, Beatles and signed guitars and Marilyn Monroe in the background. Our cards aren't our mainstay, but it's provided a great opportunity for us to connect with collectors. And as we'll kind of talk about tonight, I'm sure, collectors are collectors. I started out as a kid, floating around card shows, collecting cards, and it's all kind of spawned and evolved to this. And so the National's always a special thing for me. I went to the big National in 1992 as a kid, or 91, I think it was, in Anaheim, when they broke. I think that was the first time they broke either the 50,000 mark or the 100,000 mark for the first time. So it's cool to evolve from being a little kid waiting in line outside to now I'm, got a booth in the corporate area and I'm part of the action. So it's pretty cool.
You've had that booth in the corporate area for several years now. I mean, probably since, as far as 13, 14. Do you go back that far?
Gee, I mean, I've been going to the show consecutively for about 13 or 14 years. And then we started exhibiting, I want to say 2012. So probably around 10 or 11 years. But it's, the crazy thing about it, Jared, is even though we're in year, let's say 10, we'll use a round number, and you kind of know the way it goes. I'm still running around just as frantic, just as tired, just as stressed out. That's just the nature of the beast. It's such a big show, and it's an undertaking, especially going across country with, we're going to have probably like 150 things there.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a task, but it's always well worth it. And it's fun once you get there and you're set up and you got thousands and thousands of people there.
Well, you guys always do a great job setting up the booth. Obviously, I visit the booth every year, come hang out with you, say hello. We go back personally quite a ways, so it's good to connect with you, and it's nice to be able to do this with you now. As you're aware, I'm really expanding my auction coverage, live stream business, if you want to call it that, and Iconic Auction. And I'm so excited to be able to diversify outside of just sports cards and have Iconic Auctions on with me. LCG Auctions, another one that does not sports card stuff. It's really cool to have a nice diverse selection. I'm learning so much, which is a lot of fun, and I think it's great for the sports cards live audience to get to learn about all these other things. I said today, I put out there, you don't have to come on with any pressure to bid or to buy anything, but there's an education here to be had, and I think that's really cool. And if something does tickle your fancy, you never know, maybe you get into collecting something new that you discover here tonight, or not. That's fine too. But it's just fun to work with you here, Jeff, and to help spread the word. I think it's always interesting, and something I like to give my guests the opportunity to do is to speak to the audience a little bit about how you built the business, some of your ethics that you stick to. You've got a great reputation in this business, and I think it's just nice to sort of speak to that a little bit, if you want to. How did you build this to where it is today?
Well, I mean, I started as a kid. Yeah, I kind of alluded to the beginning in our first interaction here. Started as a kid. I'm a second generation collector. My dad started collecting autographs as a kid, and that evolved into him becoming a more advanced collector as he got older, and then me being exposed to that. And as I said previously, I was running around baseball card shows in the late '80s, early '90s, trying to get autographs of guys like Kevin Moss and looking for Brian Taylor cards and
Todd McDonald.
People.
Sorry, Ben McDonald.
Manon. I don't know if I'm saying the name right. I'm sure you'll know it. Manon Rayum, right? The female hockey player.
Mano Rayum. Yeah, that's okay.
Right. Clearly American.
Yeah, and I know your history is it's funny. Todd McDonald's in the chat, and I'm like, no, Ben McDonald, the pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles back in the early '90s, Upper Deck baseball stats. But I guess what I'd like it to, it's funny because I'm always impressed by how auction companies continue to bring items to auction to their customers. And when I say, how did you build this? I guess I'm getting at relationships, really. Is your business built on relationships and repeat customers and repeat consigners? And do you have a network out there that you talk to regularly? And, are you wrangling items on a constant basis? How does that work?
Jer, somebody once told me it's a big business, but a small world, and what that has always meant to me is, there's, now it's a multi-billion-dollar business especially if you lump up sports cards and memorabilia all together. I don't know, 100 billion, I think is a word I've heard said before, which makes sense. But, there's the key components in this business: clients, dealers, people you work with. They are there and they're around. And it's one of those things, what comes around goes around. When I first really started in this business, when I started running auctions, which was 22 years ago, when I started running a company called Odyssey Auctions, which at the time was owned by Collectors Universe, which is Collectors now, the parent company of PSA. It was all about establishing myself and getting to know people and, calling people and trying to solicit consignments, and they, throw me a couple bones here and there, or tell me, touch base with me when you actually get going and when you get something good. And quite frankly, that took probably about 13, I would say between 12 to 14 years before a ball really got rolling. And it was just about step by step, Jared. It was about building relationships, living up to your word, and being an auction company, getting results. And so, I would start out with stuff that I could get, be it, let's say a 50 to $200 items. And then, some people started getting confident and giving us, like $200 to $500 items. And it just all evolved from there to the point where, I used to, when I started Iconic in '08 on my own, my own auction company, I was, I would only have auctions quarterly, and I would be fretting, oh, am I gonna have enough stuff? Am I, is this gonna be enough stuff to make it work and everything? And now we run auctions on a monthly basis, and literally each month it's like a race to the finish. And quite frankly, having to put the brakes on some things because we got so much stuff coming in. And I'm very fortunate for that, because that's all a function of all the relationships I've made, and all the great people I've worked with, and all the great clientele that has believed in Iconic and continues to do so.
Right. Well, yeah. So there's 1,881 items currently listed in the national feature auction. It goes live tomorrow. The auction is not yet live tonight, everybody. The auction goes live tomorrow. iconicauctions.com. You'll be able to bid on there tomorrow. If you want to register, please go ahead and do so. You maybe get that done ahead of time. You've got tomorrow to get some early bids in, all week after. The auction ends next Saturday, the 29th, the night of the second last night of the National is when the auction ends. So come Sunday at the National, the Iconic Auctions booth is pretty much emptied out because all those items are now sold. You've packaged them up, and having them transported back to the office there in Arizona for ultimate shipment. Yeah. Before we get into the items, I know people want to see the items. We're going to get into them, but I want to take another second, Jeff, and just get you talking a bit about hot topic in the auction world is shill bidding. It's a hot topic right now. People have been talking about it. And I want to give you an opportunity to just talk a little bit about how does Iconic Auctions deal with monitoring, looking for, searching out, sniffing out any shill bidders to make sure that, I won't say it's not happening, because I don't know if it's possible to get rid of it altogether, but how do you mitigate that to keep Iconic as a safe spot for people to bid as possible?
Well, I'm going to have I don't know if it would be an unconventional opinion about it, but a logical opinion about it. And I think the answer to that is you let auction companies do their job as being an intermediary between consigners and bidders. And there's a fair balance to both. We discussed this before at Iconic. We do allow some items with reserves, albeit reasonable reserves, albeit realistic reserves. And I think what that allows for is for the auction company to mitigate the process, because here's the problem you have if you just try and pump we do no reserves and all that stuff, is if people put something into an auction and the auction, that item is just a miss for whatever reason. You have an auction, there's hundreds, if not thousands of items. People are, collectors at any given time are looking for one thing or another, and may not be looking for, they're looking for A and B item, but maybe not C item. And it's a real bad miss. Inevitably, one of two things is going to happen. Either the consignor is going to sell that thing at a major loss and take a hit and be resentful and just key in on that moment as a reflection of the whole auction, or they're probably going to go run out and get somebody to bid the piece and essentially buy it back. I mean, if we're going to talk reality here, the real story, and I know this from my time and talking to people in the business, and I'm sure you maybe have heard it too, is, if people are throwing stuff in auction, and I also experience this from consigners who come to me and go, hey, I had this piece in X auction, it didn't go, I ended up buying it back. Can I give it to you? As much as you want to, in a perfect world, believe that, okay, we'll put this in this auction and the consignor is just going to accept whatever and the buyer's going to bid. It's for the most time, it's not reality. There's always kind of a middle path. It's not extreme right or extreme left. It's the middle. So, with shill bidding, I think it's important to let auctions be that mitigator to say, okay, consigner, you can have a reserve, but what do you realistically want for this thing, and kind of get the consigner to be realistic about their expectations and have a reserve that's reasonable and within reach. That's always been my approach to it. We're very transparent with it. It's in our terms. It's just the way that I've always seen. I mean, there's been reserve auctions for 100, Sotheby's, Christie's, a lot of other bigger auction companies have it. Heritage has reserves. It's some of the biggest auction companies in the world. That's the way the auction world is, and it's kind of odd that in this particular area of the collectibles, memorabilia, sports memorabilia, especially, that there seems to be this big drive. Oh well, can't have reserves. It's got to be, throw it up there and let it happen. Well, the reality is that people will buy back stuff if it takes a hit at auction. So why not just let there be a fair medium, and the consignor is protected, and then if the bidder doesn't want to pay that price, they just don't bid to that price, and everybody moves on. Or they bid to the price if they like it, or it goes well above and beyond it, and everybody's happy.
I think it's like pick your poison. A lot of people don't like reserves, but I think a lot of people don't like shill bids even more. And if reserves are a great way to mitigate consigners shilling their own or buying back their own items and, paying the fees and then having to go through the process again, I think the reserve is probably a good thing. And if buyers don't want to bid, no one's forcing you to bid.
And in our case, so we kind of manage the process. And, there's a number of things that have no reserve in our auction. There's some that do, but on top of that, on us kind of being the administrator of the process, we also see the IP addresses of everybody who's placing bids. So if somebody is still going to, go to the levels of being greedy or ridiculous and trying to shill bid something in our auction, we can see that and immediately address it, remove bids, delete false accounts, and address the situation directly. Luckily we're pretty good with that. I think because of the ecosystem that we've created, I think it's a very minimal level. But inevitably, if you make something off balance and you just kind of throw things out to the wild, people are going to then get involved and play shenanigans and manipulate things if you just kind of leave it wide open.
Right. Okay. Well, I just want to have that opportunity to discuss that because it is on people's minds. I think let's face it head on here, address it, and now let's move on to the good stuff, which are the items at auction. We want to just welcome everybody who is watching right now. If you are watching later on after we do this live stream, because Jeff, you will be sharing this with your email list, having people come. I want to welcome you all to the show as well. Longtime Iconic Auctions customers and consigners. Great to have you. So let's look at the item. We have 15 items that you have selected and I've approved because I'm like, yep, that's all really cool stuff. So we have 15 things that we've actually pulled out and are going, not that you have some of them handy with you, not all of them, but I have them ready to go on my other screen. I'm going to share the screen. We're going to start getting into them. And before we get into the first one, though, I just want to share it. Let everybody see Iconic Auctions website. Here it is. We are now in the current auction right there. We'll just let that refresh. And you can see the 2023 Iconic National Auction closes Saturday, July 29th. And this is only a preview. The auction will go live July 22nd at 9 a.m. Pacific. That is tomorrow. That is tomorrow morning is when the auction does go live. And what I shared this on Instagram today, Jeff, I took some screenshots of your categories because as you go through the categories under music, all the bands are listed one at a time. Some have one item, some have five. Bob Dylan has 5 items. AC/DC has 1. Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, Nirvana, Zeppelin, Kiss, Michael Jackson, Guns N' Roses. It goes on and on. And there's just such a really cool selection here. And even as I just scroll through and you guys watching can sort of see what we're passing by on the first page, we're set to view 25 lots on the page. Keep in mind, as I said at the beginning, or just a few minutes ago, actually, there's 1,881 items.
Well, Jerry, let me stop you right there real quick, just because one kind of wonky thing about our system is anytime you enter a lot, let's say a lot has multiple categories, for some reason on that homepage, it will count. Let's say you put 3 categories on something, in that all number, it will count as 3.
Uh-huh.
So we're ending up right around 850, 900 lots. So still a good, healthy portion of lots there. But
I see.
that's, yeah.
Because Michael
Because
Jackson
in my opinion, let's talk about something about auction and what I like about Iconic that I feel is a little different with us than other places is, I actually intentionally try and keep the lot counts at less than 1,000 lots, because I feel like if you have too many lots in a particular auction, then it starts to, people just kind of get a haze. They overlook things, and that's where you're trying to bring cool things and show people stuff, and obviously you want to put as many things out and make money. That we're an auction company. We don't
yeah.
we
I just
don't
want to
we don't make money if we don't sell anything, but having less than 1,000 lots, I think, is kind of always been our goal, and kind of put us in that realm of being a boutique auction where there's a lot of focus.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I just want to point out, though, how, as you were saying, Guns N' Roses here, there's 2 Guns N' Roses items here, but they are also likely here in the 90s
Yeah,
music. So that's an example
yeah,
of where the item might show up twice here, and
correct.
the system counts each occurrence of tagging it to an item versus, so not 1,881 items, about 800 items in this auction, much more manageable and for you guys and palatable for the people viewing. Let's get into the first item that we want to look at, Jeff. And
Yeah,
what we have up first is this right here. This is the Beatles signed Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band
yeah,
record album. You guys include several images here. You have the Beckett logo, so it is, I'm assuming it is authenticated by Beckett.
yeah.
I'm gonna scroll through these images, Jeff, and let you speak to this item if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So super cool piece. It is Sergeant Pepper's. It's got all 4 signatures there. Now, this piece is a little unique. So a Beatles album signed by the 4 of them is ultra rare. Okay, they're especially from their more artistic era, like 1966 to 69, when they had like Let It Be, Sergeant Pepper's, Abbey Road. The band wasn't together like they were in the early 60s, so there's a lot less signed albums. In particular, with Sergeant Pepper's, which is like their, that's their masterpiece that everybody goes to. Uh, there's maybe a couple known authentic examples to exist. So this album's a little unique in that it is hand signed by Paul McCartney. McCartney signed this very album, but with the 3 other signatures, the John Lennon and the Yoko Ono, the George Harrison and the Ringo Starr, those signatures came from other signed albums and then were given to a paper archivist who then uses a process of blending those signatures onto the album and presenting them as such. Now it's on all the letters of authenticity and everything, and in the description, it's clearly stated. But to give you an idea of what it does is it creates an opportunity for a collector at a much more reasonable level to acquire authentic autographs from all 4 Beatles on an album. There's been, I think, 2 or 3 examples of just pure signed albums from the time period of this album that have come out. They've gone for $200,000 to $400,000 each. Okay, crazy money. Now, a piece like this piece probably going to go for 30 to 50, 40 to $60,000. So it provides a much better opportunity for people. Only so many people are going to be able to afford a $250,000 to a $500,000 album. But this provides that opportunity to get the 4 authentic signatures on a Sgt. Pepper's, and it's this image here, this gatefold image of them all in the military regalia and everything. That's like one of the most iconic images in all of music. So it's kind of an interesting thing as we kind of talk about different things. We get into different categories, Jared. Like we have posters, and in the poster market, it's very common that posters are restored and things like that. So, each niche of collectibles has their own kind of set of standards and whatnot. And in the case of like music memorabilia, and especially like older things, it's not uncommon to see things that may have been restored if there was damage to it or something of that nature, because it's not so much about the grade per se of memorabilia as much as it is the authenticity of the signatures and then the piece and presentation that it's on.
Yeah, different than sports cards for sure, but that's just the way the hobby has evolved, and the differences between these two different categories. I think it's really cool, and I like how you said, if this was a piece that had all four signatures on that album originally, you're talking $200,000. Here's an opportunity to buy something with authentic signatures. It's like buying a 52 tops mantle in a PSA 6 holder versus a PSA authentic holder. It might be, and maybe that's not fair. Maybe I'm even being harsh on this item, but to me, that's still an authentic Mickey Mantle 52 tops card, but you're going to get it for 20% of the price, and you might probably be just as happy in many cases. So
some collectors, it's different strokes for different folks. Some people are going to be like, I have zero chance of ever owning a Sgt. Pepper's, and then something like this comes along and they go, you know what? This is cool. It's all authentic signatures. I like this. This will be my opportunity. And then there's people who either look at it completely different or in a different socioeconomic category where they go, I don't want that. I want the rarer version of it. But it's just a different take. And like you said, just like with the 52 Mantles, you're going to pay less for one that's been altered or trimmed or whatever versus the one that say is an 8. But again, if you can't afford an 8 and you can't even afford, let's say, a 2, then that's your alternative opportunity to get an actual 52 Mantle.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure something like this will do well. The opening bid is going to be $10,000. We can see right here as that's the minimum bid. And will there be a description added to this listing?
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, we wanted to do the show with you tonight. And so we're plugging away all night, getting things fine tuned, making sure to, cross the T's and dot the I's. And
Before
this will have
officially...
a description. This one just got freshly authenticated by Beckett. So the image of the cert may or may not come before the auction is closed, but hence the reason we put the Beckett logo in there. We put logos sometimes is, a piece might have gotten recently authenticated and we just don't have the letter of authenticity in hand yet.
All right. Makes sense. All right. Well, there you have it. There's the first item we're looking at. Let's move on to the second item. Now, this is pretty cool. George Washington, appointment to the Declaration of Independence, signer William Ellery. Can you explain what that all means?
So this is super cool. This was a piece that came into or I got a call one day, and a lot of times you get these calls from people. They're older, or they just got something. A family member dies. They get something. They have no idea what it is. They are not collectors. They're just average people, but they know if it's authentic, there's some type of value. And I don't know, 8, 9 times out of 10, it's usually something's printed, or if we get a call about cards, they send the pictures and it's like the 89 score cards, like all the junk cards. So gentleman calls, says that his mom had passed away and that he had a document that originated from his stepdad that he thinks might have been signed by George Washington. So I go, okay, well, send me pictures. Let me see what it is. So I get it. And I look at the signature, this what you're seeing on the screen right now, this classic, beautiful, flowing George Washington signature. And I go, well, that looks like his signature, and that looks like an old presidential appointment. So have them send it in, have the guys over at Beckett look at it, and sure enough, it's authentic. But when I get the piece in, I'm looking at it, and especially with historical items, it's really kind of neat in that, when it's appointments or something like that, you look at dates or you look at names on it because it might have been written on a particular day, or it might have been, appointing somebody significant. And with this one, we hit about as big of a jackpot, I think, as you could hit on something of this era, the Revolutionary War era, I see that it's made out to William Ellery, and I go, oh, I think I know that name. So I go to a Google search real quick, and sure enough, William Ellery is one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Now then there comes layers of, okay, is this the William Ellery or is it another William Ellery? A lot of times back then, people name their sons, would be William Ellery II or whatever. So I do a little research and the time period adds up. So I call the consigner and completely had glossed over the fact, just because the first hurdle, the big hurdle of authenticity is always that question mark. His stepfather was William Ellery Lauren, and is, I believe, I don't know how many steps, but like fifth step direct descendant from William Ellery. So this document, it's a presidential appointment from 1790, was kept in the family for what, 233 years, something crazy like that. And now basically all the direct descendants are gone, and they're just looking to put it out in the marketplace and let somebody else enjoy it. So, the super cool thing about this, Jer, is not only is it made out to William Ellery, who's another founding father. If you look up, as soon as you Google William Ellery, it says he's one of the founding fathers of the United States of America. Then you go further into it, the document itself is super rare. It's one of the early type pressings of a presidential appointment. And I talked to some experts, and they say that this version of it, Washington took office as president of the United States in 1789. So this document was done in like the first, I think 18 months that he was president. And, now today when presidents do appointments, it all happens in a couple months. It's very quick. It's very, they can do hundreds of appointments in a matter of a few months. In this time period, they were figuring out the country. They were figuring out, oh, well, we need this, we need that. Who's going to be qualified to do this? I mean, this is all the inception of the United States of America. And William Ellery was very prominent in that area and was very, very vocal about making sure that the American ports were strong, and that they were vital, and they were established really well, because that was going to be a key to the country surviving. So here's Washington appointing him to be a collector in what was known as Newport in Rhode Island at that point, but now we know it as Newport, Rhode Island. But it's just one of those cool things where it's cool enough that George Washington signed it. I mean, this document sat in front of Washington, he signed it, but it really was significant in the development of the United States.
Yeah. Very, very cool. I like it. Says right here, given under my hand at the city of New York, the 14th day of June in the year of our Lord, 1790. And there's George Washington's autograph. And now the value of this, I see the minimum bid's $10,000. The value of this item, Jeff, is it about the historical significance of George Washington appointing William Ellery to the Newport, or is it the fact that it contains George Washington's authentic autograph?
All the above. There's multiple levels to it. It's just like a 52 mantle is worth being a 52 mantle just as that, even if it's beat up badly. But then if it's in great quality, obviously, that levels it up. In this case, just being a original early appointment by Washington, hand signed in this particular format, where it's like that big bold type font at the top that says George Washington, super rare version of his appointment. One of the first, you could argue this is the first form of a presidential appointment ever.
That's really cool.
So that in itself makes it rare. But then you add on the fact that William Ellery was a fellow founding father, and this was for a very key position in which history stuff's super cool, because you can go so deep down the wormhole with it, in stuff that you might have not learned in school or you might not know. And this is one of the funnest pieces I've worked with in a while, because there was a lot to learn about it and a lot of understanding about what went behind this document. Right. So Definitely more valuable than the average Washington document. And I'm going to be excited to see, because it's one of those open-ended type of pieces that's great for an auction, because you just don't know how much that's going to resonate. It's certainly going to resonate, but to what level? Well, that's why you have auctions.
All right. Let's move on to the third item that we're looking at tonight. This one resonates well with me. A Wayne Gretzky signed O-Pee-Chee rookie card. Now, I'm going to open it up. I'm just going to say a few quick words about it. The card itself is not in fantastic shape. It's got a crease up there. It's got some surface wear. It's an old card. It's a well-loved card. It has one of his earliest autographs on it right down here, as you can plainly see. Take a quick look at the back. It has these two thin blue lines coming right down here. You can see them again up here. Some people, I think, mistakenly consider it to be a first print, but I just call it the copy with the blue lines on it. Nonetheless, it is an added feature for a lot of people. Now, this, as we see it, it is not slabbed up. Can you tell us what's going on with this particular Gretzky autographed rookie card?
There was an error on the slab. It had a grade that clearly didn't equate to what the actual physical card grade was.
It was overgraded or undergraded?
I mean, eyeballing on these pictures, what type of grade do you think this card would have?
Yeah, the card itself is probably like a 2 sort of thing.
Not a 7.5, right?
Okay, so that's not even an overgrade. That's just a mistake.
Clearly, it was so far off. It was clearly a mistake. As great as it would be if the card was a 7.5 vintage signed Gretzky rookie, it wasn't clearly realistic. So we sent it in to be reslabbed as simply authentic card.
I was going to ask. So you identified that, hey, this thing isn't appropriately, the grade isn't appropriately reflected on the label. We're going to send it back to get it appropriately done. And so you took that initiative?
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of those judgment calls where there's one or two things. You could either shrug it off and go, okay, well, yeah, I mean, I guess they put that number on there. We'll let somebody else, have that. But the reality is anybody who's going to buy this card, or anybody who is going to potentially engage in bidding in it, especially, they probably have an understanding of cards, would be absolutely puzzled. Especially, you could see on the front side, you could see that that crease going down diagonally, at the top where Oilers is going down there. It was clearly a mistake. So mistakes like that do no benefits to the bidders. It does no benefit to the authentication company. And so you just do the right thing. You send it in, you get it properly readjusted. And that way everybody gets what they're supposed to get, which is still, listen, this is where it gets, to me, so I told you I started out, collecting cards, and then it evolved into autographs. But then I've kind of come back on it where I like cards too. And like everybody else, I got really into cards during the pandemic. But I've also learned to I've got a real appreciation for like signed rookie cards, in particular signed rookie cards where the athlete signed it in the era of their rookie year, or somewhere close to it, within that rookie era. And this is one of them. And I on a personal level, when I was at the Stanley Cup Finals, I told you I was in Vegas at the Stanley Cup Finals, being there, and where I was sat, I happened to see Wayne Gretzky a couple rows over eating a sandwich, watching the Stanley Cup in between his commentary. This
was the Stanley. You sent me a picture from that game. That was the Stanley Cup game-winning game. You were at the final game of the
this
playoffs.
Current Stanley Cup with the Golden Knights and the Panthers, right? It was the Golden Knights and the Panthers.
So I just want to make a comment, because Willie T says, that's not the greatest autograph on the Gretzky. Well, it's what's important though is that this is his rookie autograph, or his very early autograph from his first or second year, and that's the way he signed back in the day. So it's actually a very awesome autograph. It's not as nice as his current autograph, which he has really taken care to make beautiful, because he signs a lot. But his original autograph, I mean, I think this is super cool. I have a copy of his O-Pee-Chee card, his O-Pee-Chee 79 rookie card autographed. The autograph is very similar to this one, and I love it. I love it because it was signed in his rookie year as my copy was. So I think it's really cool, but it takes a savvy person to recognize that and not just make a comment that it's a terrible autograph by Gretzky. It's not his nicest autograph, but it is not terrible. It's actually pretty darn cool.
But now the flip side of that is there's a lot of rookie cards out there signed by him in like blue Sharpie or black Sharpie that have signatures from the 90s or 2000s or fairly recent when he was at like a golf tournament or something, nicely signed. To me, that is like putting new paint on an old car. You want it. I'm one of those guys that likes an original item in original condition, such as like in the case of this card, and especially with this, I like the early signatures. To Willie's point, it's not the prettiest signature like we were talking about, but it's from the time period. And there's some people that appreciate that. There's some people that don't. Just like I look at the modern day signature nicely signed, I might go, oh, that's a nicely signed rookie, but it was signed in the modern day on an old, on a vintage rookie. That doesn't do it for me.
No, I know. It comes back to having it signed at the time. I think it's really cool. Willie says he thinks it fails authentication. It's already been authenticated. It doesn't fail. Yeah. It's a legitimate autograph.
100% his vintage signature.
There's mine, and I mean the autograph is similar, except on your card it's Wayne over Gretzky. Mine is in a row, so it looks different, but it's that same sloppy rookie year autograph, and I think it's really cool.
I feel like Gretzky is grossly undervalued because we've seen this rise of the GOATs in all the sports. And, LeBron has now, like in the case of LeBron, his signed jersey goes for as much as Jordan's, or you have Brady who goes a step above everybody else. And Mahomes is kind of like a little step higher than everybody and just below Brady because he might be the next GOAT. In baseball, you've got Ohtani stuff going nuts, and you've got Ruth stuff that's top of the hill. To me, I feel like Gretzky is a crazy good value in my opinion, given that you look at some of his in going to the Stanley Cup. Actually, I sat with my kids. One of the kind of cool things connecting with your kids and sports and all that. I've watched hockey, but I'm not a really rabid hockey fan. So there's a lot of elements to it that I'm still learning. And so I sat there with my kids going, oh, well, he's got, all these goals. Who's the next up? And then, things would happen in the playoffs and they go, oh, last time that happened was Gretzky and this year. And you'd look and you'd see, well, Gretzky did that like 50 times in his career. And the next guy has done it only like 18 times. And so you realize he's such a behemoth in hockey. He's such a cut above the rest. Yet, I feel like comparative to the other GOATs, his value is really kind of diminished and should be higher. Maybe it's because he's nice, and the only thing I could think of is he's nice and is still accessible, whereas Brady, Jordan, LeBron, and even like Ohtani to an extent, those guys that are either potential GOATs or already GOATs are pretty much inaccessible and only do exclusive signings through their signing partners. Whereas Gretzky's still an accessible guy, but he's Gretzky. So
yeah, I think you're right. He is accessible. He does sign for Upper Deck still. He signs. I won't say quite a bit, but he does sign on an annual basis. And then it's hockey, which just doesn't get the love that baseball, basketball, and football do get. And I just want to make one final comment on this card is that, the opening bid is $1,000. So you're going to be able to get in on an autographed Gretzky O-Pee-Chee rookie. Take into consideration the condition of the card. It's a low-grade card. Take into consideration the autograph. Willie T, it's not for him. But that's the thing. There's a lot of people that it would be for. I love that it's an of the period autograph. So some people are going to want this, and it's going to find a great new home. And that's the nice thing about an auction. Not everything is going to be for everybody. So, okay, ready to go to the next one?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. This is really cool. This is really cool. Yeah. This is the 1985 Michael Jordan Prism Jewel sticker. This is signed by Michael Jordan. There it is. You have it with you. I'm going to just here.
Yeah.
Let's just put the spotlight on you for a sec, Jeff. So there you are. If
There
you just
it
hold that
is.
up. Yeah.
So I've got a great story about this in particular because it can really, now this relates to, again, people kind of looking at things in a different light, but not necessarily their opinion isn't necessarily of the consensus or doesn't necessarily take off. That's one of the cool things about collectibles is everybody can have a different view on things, and some things will take off that you never imagined. So there's, I think, 2 or 3 of these that have ever been signed by Jordan. The reason I know this because I know the person that got them done. Jordan, the story with Jordan is for decades. He had a camp in Santa Barbara, California, where kids could go, and he would, have coaches and mentor them and all that stuff. And then at the end of the camp, each camper would get an autograph. And so over time, people started to realize that, and so they would either bring hey kid, you want to go learn basketball from Michael Jordan? Great, let me get this thing signed, and I'll pay for you to go spend time with the GOAT, which is great. That's a fair trade-off. So I know a gentleman that did this, was adamant he would go and get all kinds of stuff signed by Jordan. Some of it made perfect sense to me, being primarily a memorabilia guy. He'd go get basketballs, he would go get big posters signed by him. But then he started getting these offshoot cards signed, and he showed me one day. He's like, "Man, I spent, and this is probably 10 years ago, if not longer." He goes, "Man, I got these stickers. They came in only vending machines, and they're really, really rare." And at the time, I think he said he paid almost $1,000 a piece or somewhere thereabouts, which, anything about this Prism sticker now, that's a joke in itself. Now it's skyrocketed. But I remember seeing these things and having a conversation like, "Are you really sure you want to get these? Why don't you try and get basketballs and other things that made sense to me?" Or even he was even getting Jordan assigned the Fleer rookies, which made sense to me because I know that as his rookie. But there's obviously levels to Jordan rookies and star and all that stuff. And this guy just said, "I think there's a chance for upside for this because nobody else has them." And he also got, I don't know what it is, Jared, you may know, but there's that Washington Wizards patch card that I've seen go for like $1 million+. There was it's one of the first, I think it's the first Jordan UDA insert that ever came out. He got those and was getting Jordan to sign them. So the long story short, even by then I was 10, 13 years into my career as an auction guy and memorabilia authority. I thought he was a fool getting this done, and I was completely wrong. And a couple years ago, we had one that we sold at the National. I think we got, I want to say 90,000, either 70 something thousand or 90, maybe it was 70,000 plus the premium. But I remember calling him that night and being like, "Man, I'll never forget," shaking my head after seeing you, thinking, "Why is he getting these things done? Nobody's going to care." And I was completely wrong.
Well, I know that this Jewel Prism sticker is a very popular piece amongst Jordan collectors. It is rare, and the fact that it came out of a vending machine is just sort of funny, not a pack-pulled sticker, but it's really nice with the autograph on it. Minimum bid, opening bid, $10,000. So really great piece. And let's move on to the next item now. Staying on topic with Michael Jordan, this is his debut ticket from his first NBA game. Let's take a quick look at it here. Let's blow this up a little bit. Chicago Bulls versus Washington Bullets, October 26th, 1984, 7:30 p.m., Chicago Stadium. I mean, that's really cool. And I've done shows on tickets before. I've had ticket experts on, and I've learned a bit about tickets. And to me, a Jordan debut ticket is probably one of the best tickets you can. Now, there are Jackie Robinson's first game. There are bigger, more important tickets, but still, Michael Jordan's debut ticket, that's pretty awesome.
It's, as I would believe, it's one of the Mount Rushmore tickets if you're a ticket collector. It seems like Jackie's debut ticket is the top of the top, but this is right there. I mean, it's Michael Jordan starting his NBA career. I mean, what more could be said about it? And the cool thing I love about tickets like this, obviously it's just a stub, but you could tell this thing was used at the game. Some people, they like the full tickets, whereas I kind of look at it like, well, gee, if a ticket is full, then it was never used. It was never on site when the event happened. Whereas if it's a stub, somebody went to that game, used this ticket to get in, and that ticket sat there during this moment, this historic moment. So
well, that's I'm of the same mindset. I say this a lot when I'm talking about cards. I want my vintage cards to look vintage. I don't want them to look pack pulled from the 1910s to the 1950s. I want them to have a bit of aging to them. So a Gem Mint 10, Jean Beliveau rookie from 1953 doesn't really do it for me. I like my PSA 5 with toned borders, and I like that. I also, when I started diving into tickets with a couple of guests I had over the last year or so, I'm of the same mindset that if what I love about a ticket is that it was at the event. So if it wasn't at the event, to me, and it wasn't used, it's not nearly as cool, not even close. For me, it's almost like the difference between a sheet cut card and a pack pulled card. I way want the pack pulled card. I don't want the sheet cut version or the non-pack pulled version. I know it's a loose analogy, but to me, I always try to compare things back to sports cards. And this was used. I love that it's got the crease through it. I even like that it's partially perforated here at the top. I mean, this thing was in somebody's pocket at the game. That's cool.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that there's many tickets that ended up like this, and then either that night or a few nights later, or a few weeks later, or a few years later, then got thrown in the trash and are gone forever. So there's that cool dynamic of, especially, kid from North Carolina was debuting that night. Not something that people saw coming from, a million miles away, like when Wemby is debuts, whatever game that is, even though now, they don't make a lot of physical tickets, everybody's going to be trying to get a physical ticket.
Yeah. Times were so different back then in the early 80s than now, just in terms of keeping up with college players. There were a few people who knew Michael Jordan was going to be a superstar, but not a lot of people. It wasn't as common knowledge back then. Well, that's a really cool piece. Minimum bid $5,000. Let's go on to the next item that we are looking at, and we're moving off of sports, and we are now looking at a Lynyrd Skynyrd band signed album. This was signed 3 days before their plane crash that killed several members. I'm going to scroll through these images, Jeff, if you want to talk about this.
So again, cool. One of those things where there's a story to it. And that's one of those things that I like. I like things where there's a story to it. I mean, it's great to have a cool card or a cool piece of memorabilia that's just nicely signed or is in really good condition. But when something checks one of those boxes, but also checks like a story of significance, Lynyrd Skynyrd, like 3 days before they took their plane ride, which unfortunately ended up in several members passing away, they did an in-store signing in Florida. I want to say Jacksonville, Tallahassee, somewhere along the northern panhandle. They did an in-store record signing because the Street Survivors album had just come out. And so the band, and Lynyrd Skynyrd especially, most bands are 3 or 4 guys, maybe 5. Lynyrd Skynyrd had 7 guys in it. So you don't see a lot of band signed items because, one, they had the accident and, the lead singer, Ronnie Van Zant, and several of the guys passed away. But 2, there's like 7 guys in the band. That's hard to amass all those guys. It's documented that basically that was the only signing they did for Street Survivors before the unfortunate accident. So it's just a cool thing. If you're a Lynyrd Skynyrd fan, it's hard to find anything signed by them completely. In this case, it comes with a degree of significance.
So because I'm a card guy first and foremost, and I want to learn about this stuff, talk a little bit about the the collector base, the fanaticism that they have for signed album covers?
So in the world of music memorabilia, signed album covers are like the equivalent of like a single signed baseball, or it's if we're comparing it to cards, trying to think here. It's very prominent. I don't know how to really compare it with
But
cards. I'm thinking
it's
it's
the
not quite
go-to.
rookie, although there is those dynamics of like first albums are usually much more desirable than later albums, unless that album's a super hit. Like I guess you could argue, there's particular years in cards that don't necessarily have to be rookies, but maybe the set is a low pop or something like that that makes it, like, if it's a Kobe Bryant card, but it's from this particular set in this particular style, it might really pop. Like it's a PMG or something like that. So with albums, people love albums signed. It's a reflection of what these guys did, why they're famous. And especially vintage signed albums are really desirable because in the case of Leonard Skinner, that was the only time you could get the complete band. But it also, for people, this is just now, all of this is nostalgic. Cards are nostalgic. Game used stuff it's all nostalgic, but especially vintage signed from an era when an album came out. Leonard Skinner's a little before my time, but there's a guy, who's out there be like, man, I remember when this album came out and I was a teenager, and then you heard about the crash, and that kind of spoke to them. They were part of that whole experience, and then they become a collector, and over
How
time.
important is the condition of the album jacket itself?
It plays a part, but it's all dependent on the rarity and desirability of the autographs. And especially if you have a cover like this one, there's some factors that go into this. So this was signed in the late 70s, I want to say it was 76 or 77, I want to say, or maybe 80. I think it says in the, 77, 1977. This was signed in Florida, and had to survive. It was probably gotten by a local fan, and then had to survive the humidity and the elements of Florida for who knows how long, years, decades, whatever, not get thrown away, not get discarded, not get, floods, whatever it may be. So you have that varying level of condition is an important part. There's purist record collectors that condition's really important, but kind of in our realm that we deal in a lot, the signatures are what really matter. Now, if this thing was like, totally beat to crap and, the signature is nice, it's going to affect the value. Mm-hmm. But having a little wear and tear here and there, but it's got all 7 of them and the signatures are nice, it's fully authenticated, that speaks to people the most that usually collect this type of memorabilia.
All right. Well, appreciate that. $3,000 minimum bid. This item, along with all approximate 800 items, go live tomorrow morning on iconicauctions.com. Let's go to the next item, Jeff, that we want to talk about. Staying on the topic of signed Hall of Fame band signed items. I'll put it that way. Here we have a Beatles signed UK autograph book from 1963. You have this one with you, so you're gonna pull it out, are you?
Yeah. So love something like this. I have a little post-it note in here just to mark the page. So this is one of those things where back in the 60s, 70s, not so much after that, when autographs were considered a novelty, more of an experiential thing than it was a collectible, people would get these books. Even says in the book, autographs, and they would get personalities to sign it. We'll see a lot of times, we'll see some of these books where somebody went to a ballpark and maybe got baseball players or football players to sign it. Then they went to a concert and they got musicians to sign it. I like this piece because it tells a story. Again, I love memorabilia that tells a story. This book is in the original condition. It's not, it's been handled, but within the book is all these little pages of different signatures. Now, the person that got this book signed didn't have a crystal ball and didn't know. Maybe George Barker, maybe he was going to be the next big sensation. And that was going to be something that, the person that really took off. They just went around, and maybe they were at shows, where there was multiple talent, multiple acts playing, and they were getting different people to sign this book. And I believe in this book somewhere is even, just to show you kind of how back in the day, how autographs would be so random. I think I saw the letter mention that Judi Dench, Dame Judi Dench is in here. So they maybe went to a play where Judi Dench was performing as a young actress, and got her to sign it. But then lo and behold, they make the gold mine hit of getting these four, mop-headed lads to sign, and you have a Beatles piece.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things. It's like, when you hear about people, when the archaeologists discover like a full set of dinosaur bones intact, it's exciting. When you see something that kind of encapsulates what happened in that time period, I think it's cool. It just adds another layer to it. And it's something that, that tells the story.
Yeah, I love that it's still in the book. I mean, I had an autograph book as a kid. Everybody I knew had an autograph book as a kid, and you, like you said, you took it wherever you went when there was an opportunity for an autograph from whoever. And you might go see the Disney on Ice one day, and maybe you're going to see Stevie Wonder a few months later, and you're going to try and get all these different random the Harlem Globetrotters on another night.
Yeah, and then another night you happen to, see the Beatles or Leonard Skinner or Led Zeppelin.
All of a sudden, your autograph book is worth a minimum of $4,000. So very cool, very cool. All right, let's keep on going. See, Jeff, I told you this is going to go by fast. We're going to have fun, but we still have several items to get through. So
let's hammer it out.
We got about 6 or 7 left. So let's keep on going here. This here. So this was one I don't know who Max Schreck is and this is a Max Schreck signed album page, the original silver screen vampire from Dracula, Nosferatu. I think that's how you say it. Maybe the only authenticated autograph to ever appear in the marketplace.
Count Orlok.
It's a bit bigger for people to see the original Dracula. Is that what this is?
Yeah. So Bram Stoker, it's general knowledge. Bram Stoker wrote the original Dracula novel, about a vampire. And that's the basis of all vampire culture, all these movies and spin-offs. And really, you could even argue like the goth culture it all stemmed from this Bram Stoker idea of a guy who drinks blood. So in 1922 in Germany, they make this movie it's almost like a dark comedy, or it's not not romanticized like how we look at Dracula. They make this movie called Nosferatu with this doctor or Count Orlok, who's the vampire, and it's based around Bram Stoker's story of Dracula. So this guy plays the first big screen Dracula, which we've got now a whole history of guys that have played Dracula. It's kind of comparison to like this guy was like a turn of the century baseball player, like doesn't look the part, just like turn of the century guys in any sport really kind of look, they're wearing wonky outfits, and their glove is basically just a glove over their hand, a thin glove over their hand, or, they aren't wearing the padding. So he doesn't exactly look like Dracula. But the kind of crazy thing about this is the piece came in. The story on it is it was signed at a resort in the Bavarian Alps sometime in the 20s or early 30s. The gentleman, Max Schreck, the actor, was a European actor. I don't even know if he ever made it to the States, and he died in his 50s in 1936. So I checked with my guys over at Beckett. I checked with a few different people, and thus far, this is the only known authenticated autograph from Max Schreck. unlike most actors of the time period, he was a silent film actor. They sooner or later made it to Hollywood, and then would go out and sign autographs. This is one of those kind of weird one-offs where the guy never made it to Hollywood. He never became a big star, but yet you still see periodically, you'll see this goofy vampire Nosferatu thing in pop culture. They used a clip of it on SpongeBob. I remember sitting with my kid and watching it, and the SpongeBob, they used a clip of him. They used him in memes and stuff like that, even still to this day. And in entertainment memorabilia, vampire stuff, sci-fi things have a huge following. So this is for people that collect vintage entertainment memorabilia. This is one of those, this is one of those rare as roast beef, ultra rare. You're gonna be maybe the only one that has it.
Yeah, people that collect horror, cinema, all sorts of things. Okay, let's keep on going.
Yeah.
Next item, back to sports. This is a Peyton Manning game-used photo matched jersey. Let's blow this up. So
I got it here. It's actually not. We're gonna get some additional images to get the photo match. We had it removed from the frame, which it came through just fine. There's a couple pinholes, but more importantly, you get the full view of it. And so Peyton wore this particular jersey for a game in 2014 against the Rams. And the cool thing about this one is there is markings. It was a rough game for him. So you go, okay, rough game. His stat, I think he had an interception or 2 interceptions and a touchdown. Not the greatest of stats, but because he got roughed up a bit, there's markings all over the jersey. So a quick scan, if you type in like Peyton Manning and the date, November something of 2014 Rams, you November 16th against the Rams, you type that in and you look at photos of Peyton Manning, and especially there's some photos of him, you see this marking right here, clear as day. It's something happened. He got hit by a helmet or something like that, and it made a mark on the back of his jersey. And that's one of several points. So I love game used photo match items because to me, there's nothing more prominent or more impactful in sports than either something that the person wore when they accomplished a feat or something that they used, whatever their tool is they used to accomplish the feat. Obviously in football, it's jerseys. It's kind of hard to photo match footballs, but in baseball, you have bats. You have the bats, and I think they're in long run, they're tremendous long-term investments because that's what makes the game.
He even put an inscription, 2014 game used.
Yeah. And it's got Fanatics with it originally, where he did the Fanatics verified the game usage and then had him sign it. But further along that, we got photo matching done, and it's got like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different identification points. And like I said, it's one of those ones. Sometimes the photo matching, they've got to do those zoomed up photos where you see the stitch pattern or something. A layman can look at this jersey when we have the full front and back photos up there and see. And even in the frame, you could see that mark, and you go and see there's probably 3 different photos where you see he's in the middle of that game, and there's that mark right across the lower right side.
Yeah, right there. You can see it right there in this picture. All right, Peyton Manning, game worn photo match jersey, $5,000 minimum bid. Opens tomorrow along with all the other 800 or so lots on iconicauctions.com. Next item, a Babe Ruth signed cut autograph.
Yep.
Mint 9 by Beckett. Just a dandy of a signature, Jeff.
Zoom in on it, Jer. I don't even think I need to talk much about this one. I mean,
yeah, I know. Here,
the one thing I will say, the one thing I will say about, look at that.
Yeah.
Beautiful fountain pen signature flowing. The one thing I'll say about Ruth, that's just a commentary about collectibles in general, is sometimes, people that aren't familiar with the world of autographs and memorabilia will be like, oh, wow, you get Babe Ruth autographs in? Babe Ruth autographs aren't rare. The guy signed probably tens of thousands of autographs, but the difference is there's probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people that would love to have a Babe Ruth. So while he's not rare, it's hard to get one because everybody wants one, or two, or three, or 10 if they could get their hands on it. And because of the test of time and aging and paper and people putting stuff in the wrong place, it's hard to find nice, clean, strong signatures on him.
Well, this one is very nice.
Yeah, it's a divergence where Ruth isn't rare, but great Ruth signed items or well preserved Ruth signed items like this are hard to find because it was hard to do.
$3,000 minimum bid, opens tomorrow morning. A very nice example. I find it interesting too that the grade of the autograph is right over here, autograph grade 9. I had to look for that, but it says it right there. Yep. Authentic autograph, cut Babe Ruth of Beckett Authentication Services. Very, very nice copy of an autograph. Would look really good if a card company bought it and put it inside of a card and it became a pack pull. Is that a potential customer for this, do you think? Like,
oh yeah, we've had absolutely, and we've had companies buy from us before. I've seen some things that we've sold at auction all of a sudden is in a product, and it's kind of cool to see it come back around again.
Very cool. All right, keeping on moving. Next up, you might see a preview. There it is right there. Michael Jordan, 92-93 season, game-worn jersey, authenticated by Mears. Letter of authenticity here. Tell us about this piece, Jeff. I see a full description in here already. I just want to go down. Opening bid will be $10,000. Yep. Opens tomorrow. Over to you.
It's Michael Jordan jersey. Kind of another thing that speaks for itself. It's from the 92-93 season. It comes with a sports investors authentication letter. They looked at it. They loved it. Mears looked at it and gave it a grade 10. It also comes with a Bulls letter from their community development. It was given out by them in 2009, probably for a charity auction or something. Michael Jordan jerseys, everybody wants one, just like Ruth. Everybody wants a Ruth anything, especially if they could get their hands on game used stuff, which is ultra rarefied air with Ruth. With Jordan, jerseys are out there, but man, everybody would want one. Now, one thing we did try to get photo matching done on this one, unsuccessful, but that leads into it doesn't mean it wasn't worn by him. It's just in the especially 80s, early to mid 90s, even later 90s, the quality of photos you'd get and the availability of photos for every game. Not every game do we have high resolution photos of Michael Jordan like we do today's stars. So there's a lot of great jerseys out there that were worn by him that may not be photo matched, but it doesn't mean that they weren't his jersey. But that's also why jerseys like this go for the high fives, low six figures, and the game used photo match jerseys are fetching absolutely insane prices on him now. Like, I think one went for $10 million or something in Sotheby's, if I'm not mistaken. When you can photo match stuff from this era, or you can even photo match stuff from pre-90s, from the Ruth era all the way on up to the 90s, that's super hard to do just because it's so limited. But nevertheless, Jordan game used jersey, great provenance, and it's within reason because of that.
Right here you say, including the Chicago Bulls, stating that the jersey was used toward the end of the 92-93 season. So if the Chicago Bulls team is issuing a letter, I mean, I understand it's not photo matched, but the Bulls letter that can be tied to this exact item, that's got to be pretty, it's got to give confidence to bidders and the eventual owner that this is a legitimate game worn jersey, doesn't it? Or I don't know much about this, but isn't that Bulls letter important?
with my opinion is with game used items where you're unsuccessful with photo matching, it's about stacking opinions, especially when you're talking about something as significant as Jordan.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that everybody's in consensus. It's got the right type of wear. It's got the right type of labeling. It's got all the right features. The fact that it comes from the Bulls is it makes it stand out from, my dad's uncle's cousin was given this jersey by his nephew's aunt, and she worked for the Bulls or something, where there's no chain of provenance, there's no paperwork associating with it. Not saying that doesn't happen and there isn't, jerseys that are authentic for that, but something where you got the direct lineage from the Bulls, and all of our authorities that are in the game use sphere say, yep, looks the part. Everything matches up. That's as good as you're going to get, short of the photo matching.
Right. Okay, makes sense. And thanks, John, for letting us know that Messi scored and Miami wins 2-1.
Wow,
good to hear.
That's
next.
Cool.
Next item we are going to look at. This is cool. Notorious B.I.G. signed promo photo, one of the rarest autographs in all of music history. You have this with you to show us in real life?
I do. Let me snag the Notorious one here.
Pretty cool piece. I love the picture of them.
Here. Yeah, slab here. All right, there he is.
Oh, it's big.
Yeah, it is big. It is B.I.G. There's the label. You can kind of see it there. This one also has a 9 grade like the Ruth did. So B.I.G. obviously, no sooner did he really start to take off, he gets assassinated, murdered, whatever you want to say. And he wasn't as commercially viable or friendly as Tupac. Tupac, while rare, did start, act. I actually, side note, I was on the set of Poetic Justice, the movie he did with Janet Jackson, was trying to get Janet Jackson's autograph and let him pass by me 2 or 3 times, just because at the time it was like, Janet Jackson's one of the biggest stars in the world, and it's just some rapper guy who's trying to be an actor, co-starring with her. Who knew? But nevertheless, B.I.G. Came from New York, came from really underground, gritty hip hop scene. And, the guy was a drug dealer before he made it in rap. He wasn't, he wasn't doing Hollywood. He was, hustling the streets. So while he was a nice guy, his time span of being famous was so much shorter than Tupac. Famous in the mainstream, I should say. He got known in the rap scene for several years, but his time at being famous in the mainstream was so limited that when he was killed, I would say, in my guesstimates, maybe I've seen a total of 7 or 8 authentic pieces, period, that have been authenticated and verified as being genuine. That's it. I've probably handled half of those pieces. I think this is either my 4th or 5th B.I.G. I've handled in 20 something years now, 22, 23 years of doing this. So hip hop is like, it's becoming a very big thing in collectibles. You see Drake go on his social media and post some of his Tupac memorabilia, which some of it originated from our auction. Well,
right on. Yeah.
No credit for me there, but I mean, B.I.G. is right up there as part of one of the Mount Rushmore guys of hip hop, and there's a fraction of B.I.G.'s out there.
Yeah. All right. Well, minimum bid $4,000 opens tomorrow with the rest of the items on iconicauctions.com. 3 more to get through here, Jeff. Third last, Abraham Lincoln, a signed check. My bad. Yeah. I was looking at that. A signed pre-presidential bank check. This is a sought after item. There's the autograph right down there. What do you want to tell us about this piece?
Abraham Lincoln, kind of like George Washington, not founding father. I guess you could argue he's a founding father. I mean, came through in a critical time period, helped shape the direction of our country. He's right there as the second most desirable. In fact, sometimes people will say he's the most desirable signature of all the presidents, and Washington comes in second. But this is cool. Autograph collectors gravitate towards checks. You'll see a lot of checks out there, whether it's, vintage Hollywood, Marilyn Monroe, or historical. It's a way that, now we're all digital, but it's a way that is relatable for celebrities, icons, people of this nature to the everyday man. In this case, it's him as a lawyer. You see, it's Springfield Marine and Fire Insurance Company. What is the name of the bank? He was a lawyer in Springfield, Illinois. And so, here he is just filling out a check, making a check payable to somebody for, what is that, $12?
Yeah.
So before he became president, he was cutting checks and making payments like all of us. And checks on really any president are rare. But Lincoln, right up there, some of the rarest, most desirable checks in all the collectibles.
1859, February 28th, 1859, this thing was signed. I mean, that's history. That's so cool. So cool. All right, let's have a look now at the signed sheet I was referring to earlier, mistakenly. This is Pablo Picasso, a signed sheet. This pretty cool piece. One of the few ways a person can own something from the hand of a master artist like Picasso, because his paintings are in the tens of millions. You have it right there. Yeah. World-renowned artist Picasso. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and look, even the way he signs it, Jer, he's big and bold and pronounced with the way he dated it. And I think that's March 16th, 1963, if I'm doing the European dating form. But, that's the thing is, anything that Pablo Picasso in the art world has put his doodled on or scratched his signature goes for insane money. With Picasso, Basquiat, Warhol, these guys have works that go for millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. And in the case of like Picasso, I think there's a couple 9-figure sales on him. So, if you want something like that, you're going to have to be Bill Gates, Elon Musk, that type of money. But if you want to have something from an artist that's, cool and that, you connect with, this is perfect. I love artist signatures because, again, they're artists. So it's a signature is art in itself. It's your representation of how you write your name. And so here's an artist form of his signature, which even, look at the way he does the PI, and then there's that line, that forward line with the dash. He's artistic even in the form of the way he signed his name, which is just cool. I mean, that's what I would say about it. It's just a cool piece.
And $1,000 for the minimum bid seems, I was surprised how low based on what his paintings sell for, but I know nothing about an artist signature that's not on a painting. So
and that's, when I did sports cards, then I did contemporary autographs like modern day movie stars. And then what really drew me into the auction world and stuff was I saw a George Washington piece in an Autograph Collector magazine. I was like, you can actually own a document that he signed as president. And then I saw, as time evolved, I see things like a Pablo Picasso signed item or a Pablo Picasso letter, or a sketch, a doodle. It's like you can actually own something from a master artist. So it's intriguing if you're, if their art speaks to you, or if you're just intrigued by stuff like that. That's the thing that's always made this fun for me is the fact that things that you would think would be in libraries or museums, because they do have their stuff in libraries and museum. There's versions of it that are 100% authentic that you can get for your own personal collection, which is awesome.
As long as you're following and getting the emails from Iconic Auctions and keeping up with their auctions, you can get that stuff.
That's right.
All right. The final item we are going to look at is this single signed Ty Cobb baseball. I want to know because Babe Ruth baseball seemed to be the holy grail. Tell me about the rarity of a single signed Ty Cobb baseball versus a single signed Babe Ruth, which is tougher?
Ty Cobb. all day and night,
Like way
because
tougher, way.
yeah, I would say so, absolutely, because again, Babe Ruth was a megastar, a phenomenon, and very accommodating to fans. Ty Cobb was a generational talent, but was also a different type of guy. Wasn't as personable as Ruth. Wasn't looked upon with the same fervor and awe as Ruth. And so while he was accommodating with autograph requests, I've had funny letters where somebody would write him and didn't include a self-addressed stamped envelope, and he'd write a page and a half chiding them on how they need to have proper etiquette and blah blah blah, but then sign and send back whatever they wanted. But another thing too is Cobb, coming from an era kind of before Ruth. That's the Ruth era is kind of when single sign baseballs and stuff started to develop. That's why you see, for people that know vintage baseball, you'll see baseballs of not necessarily more prestigious names, but if they're single signed, they go for insane amounts of money because it just didn't happen. And Cobb kind of falls in that, somewhat in that zone. He was bigger than most because he was a generational talent. But he wasn't quite Babe Ruth. So while some people got him to sign single sign baseballs, he didn't take to that like Ruth, and he wasn't accustomed to it. And so a lot of what you see with Cobb is like him on a team ball or him on a multi-sign ball with other people where he attended an event. You just don't see a lot of single sign. And so, I don't know, for every 50 single signed Ruth balls, maybe you see one nice Ty Cobb ball. It's literally that dramatic of a difference.
What about the values? How does the value of a Cobb ball rank against the value of a Ruth ball? Same condition,
Yeah, so it really kind of depends. Like if it's par on par, like if you had a side panel signed Ruth ball with some toning like this, it's going to go for less than the Cobb ball. Okay. But if you have a beautifully signed Ty Cobb ball versus a beautifully signed Babe Ruth on the sweet spot, and there's a few. Well, I guess I'll give a good example. We had last National, we sold a Ty Cobb single signed ball where he actually either signed it on the sweet spot or on the side panel, but it was a jet black signature. It was a little bit of a nicer ball than this, one of the nicest I've seen. And I believe we got $70-something thousand for that. But that same ball in that extraordinary of condition signed by Ruth now is probably a six-figure ball.
Right.
Yeah. But that's because, so many people want Ruth versus now there's a lot of people that want Cobb, but it still pales in comparison, the lure of Cobb versus the lure of Ruth.
Right on. All right. Well, that was awesome. We just went through 15. We went pretty in depth there, Jeff, into 15 different items. Some of your favorites out of the about 800 that are going to go live tomorrow morning on iconicauctions.com, ending next Saturday during the National, the 29th. If you're at the National, come by the Iconic Auctions booth. Put your eyes on these items directly. There will be these and many more. I've been to the Iconic Auctions booth at every National I've been to that they've been at, and it's always it's one of those booths that stand out because it's different than the rest of them, and there's so many really cool pieces. And Jeff will be there. You can talk to Jeff. He's got some staff that'll be there too. I'll be nearby. I'll be coming by there a few times, Jeff. But I just want to say thanks for coming on and doing this and educating me, the audience. And our plan is your auction traditionally ends the last Saturday of every month, I believe is kind of how you have your calendar set up. And we're going to do a few more of these the night before the auction ends. We're going to come on and so pretty much the last Friday of the next couple months, we're going to come on and go through these with you, see what's going on, see what the items are, and really educate the audience on what these items are and how the collector base responds to it, what people look for, and things that are not simply sports cards. So I'm excited for that, Jeff. I want to thank you again. And final words to you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Come see us at booth 421 if you're going to Chicago for the National. If not, iconicauctions.com is where you can see this and everything else. And, we touched on a few signed cards, but we also have just standard cards if that's your thing. But, with Iconic, it's kind of a reflection of what I like. I like a little bit of everything. So if you're a collector, check us out. There's probably something you'd like, or at the very least, sign up and keep your keep your ear with us. Keep in communication with us, because chances are there's something we're going to have down the road, if it's not right now, that you're going to like.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Thank you again, Jeff, Iconic Auctions. Best of luck. I'll see you next week in Chicago. And with that, the inaugural episode of Iconic Auctions Showcase Live is now over.